such a thing. That's in the Hami status as well, where you could not celebrate publicly. So these have enforced the Islamic Sharia law, the Islamic law constitution, which is derived all Islam from end to end. So now we're looking at the religion itself. The religion has kidnapped terrorism. Terrorism is kidnapped by Islam. Islam is the one kidnapped terrorism, and terrorism today is part of Islam because it was embedded in it and it was demanded. And when you read the Quran, like let's read the Surah Al-Nasr, and when you read this Al-Fatih, when we go to Fatih, we are the one who goes and open the city gates, the country gates by the sword. And with this, when we go to places, it was our desire to take, launch attack against the enemy. 97% of the world issue today by the McKinsey report, by the FBI.gov and the CIA.gov, Brother Sami. And these reports shows 97% are Islamic issues. Islam is rising all over the world. You say this is a Western oppression. Well, not all the world is a Western world. Why they're killing Sudanese or Ethiopian in African continent? This is happening because they're demanded. This is what Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, he said, "Inni umartu an uqatilu al-alam, al-shu'ub," the whole world, until everyone says, I've been demanded to kill and fight the people, until all says, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. And if they do not become under the Islamic, banner, then their women, their children, their monies, their countries, their finances belong to me, to Islam. This is by Muhammad, Sahih al-Bukhari Muslim, the 900th series. So now when you look at all those, you go like, well, he was not oppressed by Western civilization. So how do we explain that?
Well, with that, we have to take a break. When we come back, I'll start it off with Brother Sami to respond to your questions posed to him. But we have to take a break. Our number is 248-416-1300. We're live in the studio. If you have friends who do not have the satellite and want to watch the program live, you can refer them to abnsat.com. At this time, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll start to take your calls, and then we'll turn it over to Brother Sami. We'll be right back.
Ten percent of $455 equals $45.50. But I only have $46 in cash. I wonder if I could take my change out of the basket.
God, you've been so good to me. Thank you for your provision in my life.
Where does all this money go? Shouldn't the pastors know that we need softer toilet paper in the bathroom? I think that instead of giving money this week, I'll buy the toilet paper that I like and give it to the church.
Lord, you know my needs. I give this in faith. Please cover my debts and make my car last a long time.
Since I sent my money to that television evangelist this week, I'll count that as my tithe.
Mom gave me $1 and I get to put it in. Why do we do that anyway?
As soon as I get out of debt, I'll start tithing.
10%? Where does that come from? What happens if I only give 5%? No, wait, that's too hard.
God, I know you see how much money I give. I hope these pastors appreciate it.
Okay, God, you know I'm giving more than the usual 10% this week, so next week, I'm keeping it all.
I cleaned the sanctuary this week. That's worth about $50. What do you know? That's 10% of what I make. I'm covered.
Jihad has come to America.
Constitutes the most devastating series of terrorist attacks in history.
The only deen Allah accepts is Al-Islam. And whoever seeks any other deen apart from Islam will never be accepted.
Allahu Akbar!
And we stand together to win the war against terrorism.
But you too will make your destruction.
Welcome back to Jihad Exposed here on ABN. Our lines are open. Our number is 248-416-1300. I'd like to make a quick announcement. Some of you may know political analyst Mejdi Khalil has a live show on ABN on Saturdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. His guests this Saturday, stay tuned, Dr. Abdul Khalik Hussein from the UK will be live on the air, as well as Dr. Saad Eldin Ibrahim from Harvard University. So make sure you stay tuned for that on Saturday at 3 p.m. I'd like to turn it over right now to Sammy to give you an opportunity to respond to what Kamal was saying. He's claiming that it is a commandment to kill infidels. Is this the Islam of Muhammad? And do you want to comment on a few of the items that he was mentioning a little earlier as well?
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot to respond to. First of all, Kamal, you say I'm saying that this is happening because of Western oppression. As I said at the start, I'm not saying this. I said I'm not going to say what I think. I'm saying what the experts are saying, the intelligence agencies, the people who are in charge of fighting these people you're speaking against.
But Sister Summer asked you specifically, do you agree with that? You said yes.
No, I said if you actually paid attention 10 minutes ago, I said just because they're against foreign policy doesn't mean they have a right to go and bomb. I said that 10 minutes ago. So no, I don't agree with it. And now to other points. Walid said, you can quote, I'm just quoting some people. He can quote some people. Okay, I'll do something better for you, Walid. I will quote you the consensus view of 16 intelligence agencies within the American government. These are 16 intelligent spy agencies in America. A consensus view, and you can read this online. I'll provide you all the links. In 2006, and I quote, the intelligence estimate completed in April is the first formal appraisal of global terrorism by United States intelligence agencies since the Iraq War began, and represents a consensus view of the 16 spy services inside government, which is titled Trends in Global Terrorism, Implications for the United States. It asserts that Islamic radicalism, rather than being in the retreat, has spread across the globe. And in the opening section of the report, indicators of the spread of the global jihadist movement cites the Iraq War as a reason. So these are 16 intelligence groups saying that the reason why radical jihadism is spreading was because of the Iraq War. So I challenge you right now, bring me 16 intelligence services, the people who are in charge of fighting terrorism, the people you are speaking against, bring me a consensus view where they say they're doing this because they simply hate our freedom and because, they're Muslims and their religion just teaches them to go out and kill. And if that's not good enough for you, how about I quote you the second man, this Terry E. Arnold. Terry E. Arnold, remember his name. And I can give you all of these links. Terry E. Arnold was the second man in the counterterrorism official, the number 2 counterterrorism official at the U.S. State Department. Okay, let me repeat that. Terrell E. Arnold was the number 2 counterterrorism official at the U.S. State Department. And he gave his reasons for why terrorism and radicalism can happen. And according to him, the reason is the torture of men in U.S. prisons in Iraq, the indefinite detention of men in U.S. prisons in Iraq, and not prosecuting those who ordered torture and abuse, like Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, and George Bush, who got away with it. So these are experts. These are the intelligent experts, the people who are fighting the terrorists. So I'm not quoting some average Bob or some average Joe or some Islamic scholar. I'm quoting the official experts who are in charge of fighting this war, who are in charge of tracking this war, who are in charge of keeping tabs on these people. And this is what they're saying. So if you have a problem with that, then nothing's going to satisfy you. And that's the topic. What motivates a terrorist?
Sammy is valuing quotes from what he calls experts to be worth more than the Quran itself. Do you agree with that, or did you ever respond to what Sammy is saying?
Hardly. He's partially quoting these experts. He's not fully quoting all these experts. None of these experts will say, well, the reason for terrorism is because of American foreign policy as an excuse for the terrorists. They're not saying, well, they're justified to do it. They're saying basically is that's the reason the terrorists are using. That's what they're using to make the claims. So American foreign policy has nothing to do with it. In fact, the Muslim Brotherhood itself was incepted in 1928, way before the so-called Western policies in the Middle East. There was no Western imperialism. England pulled out of the Middle East. France pulled out of Algeria, and they pulled out of Lebanon. And you had the Muslim Brotherhood, which was the umbrella of all the terrorist organizations. 3/4 of suicide bombings exist in Muslim countries that have no Western foreign policy whatsoever. They exist in Muslim countries that have no occupation whatsoever. In fact, suicide bombers that blow themselves up in the Palestinian areas, which I know about, you have the Al-Jabha Al-Sha'biyya, the Popular Front to Liberate Palestine. This is a Christian terrorist group. You will never find a Christian terrorist who blows himself up. You only find the Muslim terrorist who blows himself up. So to say, Islamists use the excuse, or the apologists would use the excuse that the reason they blow themselves up is because of foreign policy, because of occupation. So if occupation and foreign policy is spread equally throughout the Middle East, you will have an equal suicide bombing from Palestinian Christian as well as Muslims in the Palestinian areas. You won't find that fact, which refutes everything Mr. Sami is talking about.
And with that, I know that we've sort of been on this foreign policy for a while. I want to ask you, Pastor Wajdi, the goal of a terrorist, is it just physical destruction, or is it a psychological destruction too? For example, 9/11, almost 3,000 people died, which was a tragedy, but what was the aftermath, the psychological aftermath that came after it? So what's the goal, essentially, of these terrorists?
Well, the word that the Al-Quran used, arhibuhum, is to terrorize them, to put fear inside them. So, number one, that what they want the world to be silent against anything that the Muslims are saying or doing. Today, you cannot dare, and even some of the media, big media, cannot say anything against Islam, against the Quran, against Muhammad, because they already arhabun nas, they terrorize the people, they terrified them from saying the truth. So what the terrorists they're doing is to silence the people from saying the truth against Islam or against Muhammad. They can say whatever they like to do against anybody else, but not against them. The minute you say against them, you're finished. So this is one of the things that they're doing. Themselves, they're without hope. Most of these are acting this kind of act as a terrorist. Even those who flew the plane into the commercial building in New York, they don't have any hope in their life. And this is what Walid said, is they're different. Why the Christian in Gaza or in Palestine, they're not doing that? Because we have a hope inside us. Christ has given us life. He didn't give us death. Mm-hmm. But what Islam give death. And so out of death, you bring more death.
Thank you, Pastor Wajdi. Kamal, I'd like you to comment a little. Is it to instill fear in the eyes of the community, at least